My husband called at midnight, chuckling. I sold the apartment and filed for divorce. What he didn't know. The apartment's been in my name for months. It was just another Thursday. I was halfway through a high-stakes meeting with one of our firm's biggest clients when my phone buzzed in my blazer pocket. I usually would have ignored it, especially in front of the CEO, but something in me, a quiet, irrational tug, made me glance down. Derek. My husband. I excused myself with a practiced smile, stepped out into the corridor and answered, expecting something along the lines of, "How's the trip?" Or, "Do you want sushi for dinner?" Something normal, routine, domestic. But what I got was anything but that. "I'm divorcing you." His voice came through cold and clipped. "And I've already sold the apartment. You should start figuring out where you're going to live." I felt the floor shift beneath me. The fluorescent lights in the hallway buzzed faintly as silence expanded on my end of the call. I clutched the phone tighter, as if trying to anchor myself with it, like the thin piece of glass and steel could somehow hold the weight of the betrayal crashing down on me. "You sold the apartment?" I finally managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah," he said, almost smug. "Sophie and I need a fresh start. That place never really felt like home anyway." Sophie. The name stung like acid on skin. Then he laughed. A low, dry laugh, like this was some punchline to a joke only he found funny. And then just like that he hung up. I stood there, phone still at my ear, heart pounding in my chest, the murmur of conversation echoing behind the conference room doors. The first thought that passed through my mind wasn't how could he? It was he didn't even have the decency to say it to my face. You don't marry someone expecting them to become a stranger. Derek wasn't always like this. When we met 6 years ago, he was charming, ambitious, attentive. He made me feel like the only woman in the room, even when I knew there were others watching him. That charisma, the confidence, it pulled me in fast. For a while we were that couple. The ones who held hands at brunch. The ones who whispered across pillows at midnight about our dream home, our future kids, and the big vacation we'd take when we finally made it. We built a life together. Or at least, I thought we did. Things started to shift about a year ago. Subtle at first, missed dinners, vague excuses about work. Business trips that seemed to pop up last minute. Late night calls he took in the other room, always with his back to me. I asked once if something was going on. He laughed and kissed my forehead like I was being silly. But the distance grew. He stopped touching me physically, emotionally. Conversations became short, transactional. And when I brought it up again, he brushed it off with that same half-smile that once charmed me but now felt like a mask. I knew. Even before today's phone call, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. And then came Sophie. He'd mentioned her a few times, a new associate at his firm. "Smart girl," he said. "Ambitious." I saw her once at a company event, clinging to Derek's every word, her laugh too loud, too eager. But it wasn't until 3 weeks ago, during an argument about our finances, that he slipped. I was questioning a large withdrawal from our joint account money I couldn't trace to anything we'd discussed. He snapped, tired of my nagging, and muttered under his breath, "Sophie deserves better than that tiny apartment anyway." I froze. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Like she was the wife. Like I was the inconvenience. He didn't even realize what he'd done, just kept scrolling on his phone, ignoring the tears that had welled up in my eyes. From that moment on, my world began to unravel in quiet, painful increments. That phone call today? It wasn't just a betrayal. It was confirmation. Confirmation that I wasn't crazy. That the signs were real. That the love we'd built, or that I thought we'd built, was nothing more than a crumbling illusion. But what Derek didn't know, what made my pulse steady even in the chaos of that moment, was that I wasn't the naive, passive woman he thought I still was. He'd made a mistake. A big one. I didn't cry. Not when he said the words. Not after he hung up. Not even when I walked back into the meeting room, sat down at the head of the table, and closed the pitch with a smile I barely felt. Tears would have given him too much. Instead, I let the burn of betrayal settle into something sharper, clarity. By the time I was back in my hotel room, I had already replayed that call 100 times. Derek thought he had outplayed me. He thought he'd left me scrambling, homeless, discarded. What he didn't know was that I'd moved the Queen months ago. Back in March, Derek and I refinanced the apartment. It was a way to lower the interest rate, free up some equity, his idea, ironically. He handed me the paperwork like he always did, barely skimming the pages before signing where I pointed. He never cared about the details. That was always my thing. What he didn't notice, what I made sure he didn't notice, was a small change in ownership. On paper, the apartment now belonged solely to me. It was a quiet decision, one I made after he brushed off my questions about our dwindling savings. I told myself it was just a precaution, but deep down, some part of me had already stopped trusting him. That part, thankfully, had saved me. I pulled out my laptop and opened my encrypted files. Everything was there: scanned deeds, refinance contracts, Derek's signed consent, notarized and official. He had no legal ground to stand on. And if he'd already taken money from a buyer, well, he was in deeper than he realized. I picked up my phone and dialed Claire. She answered on the second ring, voice as sharp and steady as ever. "Please tell me you're calling about a celebratory drink and not another Derek disaster." "Worse," I said calmly. "He called. Said he's divorcing me. And that he sold the apartment." There was a pause. Then, "He what?" "He said I need to find a new place to live. Apparently, he and Sophie are moving on with their lives." Claire let out a sharp breath like she'd been punched. "Is he insane? He can't sell the place. It's your name on the deed. He signed off on that himself." "I know. I have all the paperwork." "Did he already finalize the sale?" "I don't know. But if he accepted any money, then he's in trouble," Claire said, her voice dropping into full lawyer mode. "Fraud, misrepresentation, breach of contract if he can't deliver the title. We'll start with a cease and desist. You'll need to send me everything tonight." I nodded, already opening my email. "I'm forwarding the documents now." "Elena," she said more gently, "I'm sorry. Truly. But this might actually work in your favor. Big time." The call ended, and for the first time all day, I let myself exhale. I wasn't the victim Derek thought I'd be, and he wasn't walking away clean. The next morning, Claire had already drafted the legal letters. She also reached out to the buyer's attorney and sent over copies of the deed. Within hours, she got confirmation. The buyer was furious. They had paid a substantial deposit, money Derek likely thought he could use to fund his new life. But now they wanted answers. And legal action was very much on the table. By the end of the day, Derek received a formal email outlining everything. His lack of legal authority to sell the property, the invalidity of the transaction, the potential criminal charges if the buyer pursued fraud. Oh, and most importantly, the fact that the apartment belonged entirely to me. Claire had written it beautifully, professional, factual, devastating. I imagined him reading it, smug smile melting into disbelief, rage bubbling to the surface as he realized just how royally he'd screwed up. Part of me wanted to see his face in that moment. Another part didn't care anymore. That night, I sat by the window of the apartment he thought he'd taken from me. I looked out over the city, the lights twinkling like stars beneath the skyline. He wanted to leave me broken, but all he did was free me. And now I wasn't just fighting back. I was winning. He didn't knock. Of course he didn't. It was around 7 p.m. when I heard the door fly open, slamming against the wall like some low-budget drama. Derek stormed in, still wearing his overpriced suit and that smug expression I used to confuse with confidence. He was holding a piece of paper, Claire's letter, no doubt crumpled in his fist like it had personally betrayed him. "What the hell is this, Elena?" he barked, waving the letter like a flag of war. "You think this little stunt is going to scare me?" I stayed where I was, seated on the arm of the couch, calm and collected. "I've been waiting for this. Anticipating it like you would an incoming storm, secure in the knowledge that you'd already boarded up the windows." I tilted my head slightly. "It's not a stunt. It's a legal fact. You can't sell what you don't own." His eyes narrowed. "Don't play games with me." "I'm not," I said simply. "But you've been playing one for a while now. Unfortunately for you, the board flipped." He threw the paper onto the coffee table. "This is bullshit. We bought this place together. You can't just—" "Actually," I cut in, rising to my feet, "I can." And I did. I walked to the console table by the entryway and pulled out a folder I'd prepared earlier. The deed. The refinance agreement. His signature. After we refinanced, I had the deed transferred into my name. You signed off on it, Derek. You just didn't bother to read the paperwork. Again. He snatched the documents from my hand, flipping through them with growing panic. I watched as the color drained from his face. You tricked me. I gave him a small sad smile. No. I protected myself. He let out a bitter laugh and dropped the papers onto the table. You think you've won, don't you? I didn't answer immediately. I walked past him, grabbed a glass from the kitchen and poured myself some water. My hands didn't shake. This isn't about winning. This is about not letting you erase me from the life I built. His jaw clenched. You've always had a way of making yourself the victim. Victim. I turned to face him fully. You called me from across the country to say you were divorcing me. You sold the apartment behind my back. You laughed while doing it. And now what? I'm the problem because I didn't roll over and take it. He opened his mouth, closed it, then sneered. You're being dramatic. You're being criminal, I snapped. Claire spoke with the buyer's lawyer. They're considering pressing charges for fraud. That deposit you took? If it's already gone, you've got a much bigger problem than me. His bravado cracked then just for a moment. His shoulders dropped half an inch and he looked away, jaw twitching. Gotcha. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You didn't just try to screw me over, Derek. You broke the law. And all because you thought I'd still be that same woman who trusted you with everything. He turned back to me, voice lower now, a bit desperate. Look, maybe we got off track, but we don't need to blow this up. I made a mistake, all right? But you're overreacting. Overreacting. That word. The way he said it, like I was a fire alarm screeching at a burnt slice of toast. Get out, I said, pointing to the door. He blinked. Elena, come on. You don't live here anymore. You haven't for a while. You just didn't realize it. His voice hardened again. You can't do that. I raised an eyebrow. Watch me. The silence between us thickened. The tension curled like smoke in the air. He looked around the apartment, eyes landing on familiar things, his leather jacket slung over the chair, his sneakers by the door, the things he left behind when he thought he could just walk away and come back whenever it suited him. I'll take my stuff, he muttered. I nodded. You have 3 days. After that, I'll have Claire arrange for removal. Anything left becomes mine or goes to donation. He gave me a look, one last wounded ego glance, and for a second, I could almost see the man I once loved. But only for a second, because that man had been an illusion. Without another word, he turned and walked to the guest room, slamming the door behind him. I didn't follow. I didn't flinch. I stood there in my living room, my home, heart steady, resolve solid. I just stared my past in the face, and I didn't blink. Derek didn't say a word the rest of that evening. He stayed in the guest room, the door closed like a boundary I no longer had any interest in crossing. Occasionally I heard the faint rustle of bags, drawers opening, zippers, footsteps. He was packing. Or pretending to. I didn't check. I poured myself a glass of wine, curled up on the couch, and let the quiet reclaim the apartment. The same apartment he tried to steal from under me. Funny how something as simple as silence can feel like victory. The next morning he was gone. Not completely, his stuff was still here, but the man himself had disappeared, leaving behind only a mess of half-packed boxes and an overwhelming scent of his cologne. I gave myself a moment to breathe, to absorb the emptiness he'd left behind. It was strange how it didn't hurt. It didn't feel like grief. It felt like oxygen. Then I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. Room by room I started clearing him out, sorting what was his, what was ours, and what had long ago become irrelevant. I had no plans to keep anything, but I wasn't going to let him take up any more of my energy or my space. It was in the office, the one we used to share, but that he'd gradually taken over, that I found it. I was going through the desk, mostly receipts, old tax folders, and some useless gadgets he always insisted he needed for work. I opened the bottom drawer, his drawer, and found a stack of papers shoved toward the back. Nothing unusual at first glance. Mostly boring. Old contracts, warranty cards, a broken pen. But behind them, folded neatly between 2 manila envelopes, was a single sheet of lined paper. Handwritten. Curious, I pulled it out. The handwriting wasn't mine. It wasn't Claire's. And it certainly wasn't Derek's. His was all caps, harsh and angular. This was softer, loopy, feminine. At the top, written in black ink. Derek, I miss you more than you know. I hate hiding. I hate the lies. I want a life with you, open, honest, and ours. Just hold on a little longer. I know the apartment money will come through soon. You promised. Once it does, we leave. Just you and me. I read it twice. Then a third time. Then I sat down. For a moment I couldn't move. I just stared at the page, fingers trembling slightly at the edges, the silence around me somehow heavier now, more watchful. Sophie. Of course it was her. But the content, this wasn't a simple affair. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. This was a plan. A life-altering, deliberate betrayal. He didn't just cheat. He conspired. He had promised her the money from the apartment he didn't even own anymore. He was going to steal it from me and run away with her. Build a new life. Leave me with nothing. That familiar burn crawled up my spine again, but it wasn't sadness. It wasn't even rage. It was clarity. Cold and cutting. All this time I'd questioned myself. Doubted my instincts. Blamed my exhaustion, my work schedule, the natural drift that happens in long-term relationships. But this letter, this single sheet of ink and arrogance, was the confirmation I didn't know I needed. He had been planning my erasure long before that phone call. And now? He had nothing. I placed the letter on the table and snapped a photo of it. Then another. Front and back just in case. I slid it into a plastic folder and tucked it away with the rest of the documentation Claire might need. She would love this. Then I picked up the folder and walked it straight to the shredder. I thought about confronting him with it showing up wherever he'd gone, slamming it down on some smug coffee table and watching his expression crumble. But no. He didn't deserve the reaction. He didn't deserve the power. He had gambled with my life and lost. I had nothing to prove. That afternoon Claire called. Update, she said, her voice brisk. The buyer has filed a formal complaint. They're threatening criminal charges if Derek doesn't return the deposit by Friday. I smiled to myself. Good. I've also drafted the preliminary divorce papers. They're solid. You'll walk away with everything. And him? I asked. What leverage does he have? Claire let out a small laugh. None. Unless he wants to explain to a judge why he tried to sell a property he didn't own. I nodded, gripping the phone tighter. Thank you. Elena, she added, her voice softening. You're handling this better than most people would. I'm not most people anymore, I said quietly. After we hung up, I stared at the place where Derek's desk used to be. The bookshelves still had his old thrillers, the ones he always said he'd read but never did. His framed MBA diploma leaned slightly to the left, crooked like his morals. I walked over, took the diploma down, and tossed it into the nearest box. Then I slid the desk drawer shut with a satisfying thud. I thought of Sophie, of her rounded handwriting and foolish hope, of her clinging to promises built on lies. She thought she was getting the man of her dreams. She didn't know she was inheriting a nightmare. And me? I was finally waking up. The days that followed were oddly quiet. Too quiet. Derek hadn't come back. Not for his clothes, not for his gaming setup, not even for that ridiculous whiskey decanter he was so proud of. His absence should have felt like peace, and for the most part it did. But every so often, a strange itch crept under my skin, a sense that something wasn't quite over. That Derek wasn't done. On the surface, everything was moving forward. Claire filed the preliminary divorce paperwork. The buyer's legal team was sharpening their claws. I had forwarded her the photo of Sophie's letter, though I hadn't told her the full story behind it yet. I wasn't sure I needed to. There was power in having pieces the other side didn't know you held. Still, at night I sometimes found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Derek's next move would be. He wasn't the type to retreat quietly. He was the kind to regroup, to manipulate, to twist. I just didn't know what shape that twist would take. Then one night, 2:14 a.m., my phone rang. It wasn't a number I recognized. No caller ID. No name. I stared at it, pulse ticking up slowly. Instinct screamed to let it go to voicemail. But curiosity had always been a flaw of mine. I answered. Hello. For a moment all I heard was breathing. Shallow. Uneven. Then came the voice. Low. Female. Unfamiliar. You don't know me, she said quietly. But you should know. Derek's in trouble. And if you're still tied to him, that means you might be too. I sat up instantly. My voice came out hoarse. Who is this? Let's just say, someone who learned the hard way. There was a pause. A shift in tone. Sadness layered beneath urgency. You need to be careful. He owes money. Serious money. Not just to banks. The kind of people who don't take broken promises lightly. I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of money? 6 figures. Maybe more. I don't know the full total. But I know he's desperate. Selling your apartment was just the first move. He was going to take the money and disappear. My chest tightened. Disappear with Sophie? I asked. A bitter laugh came through the line. Oh, Sophie's just one in the rotation. She thinks she's special. We all did. The words landed like ice water down my spine. Who was this woman? I'm telling you this because I know what it's like to be blindsided by him. To be left picking up the pieces while he vanishes. My throat was dry. Why now? Why are you calling me? A pause. A breath. Because I thought I was the only one. Until I saw your name in a message he forgot to delete. Until I found the address. He thinks no one's watching. But I am. And if you're smart, you'll get out of his orbit while you still can. And just like that click, the line went dead. I stared at the screen, the digits still glowing. No message. No way to call back. Just silence and the echo of her words still crawling through my mind. He owes money. He was going to disappear. Sophie isn't the only one. I sat in the dark for a long time, piecing it together. The late nights. The missing funds. The refinanced apartment. The urgency with which he tried to sell it. And now, this warning from a ghost, one of many, it seemed. Claire had told me we had the upper hand. But she didn't know we might be playing a different game entirely. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a ticking bomb. The next morning I called Claire before the sun even came up. She answered groggily. You better be holding coffee or a crisis. Crisis, I said. And I need you to check something. Something serious. I told her everything about the call, the woman, the debts. I gave her every detail I could remember. The amount, the implication of threats, the pattern of disappearing acts. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, Elena. This changes things. You think it's real? I think it's possible. Too possible. I'll dig. There's got to be records, lawsuits, liens, past bankruptcies. If he's connected to anything shady, we'll find it. And if he's being hunted, then we stay ahead of it. We make sure you're separated on paper and protected in every way legally. And Elena. Yeah. If things get worse, you need to consider changing your locks. Your accounts. Your patterns. All of it. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I'm already there. After we hung up, I stood in the living room and looked around again. This apartment had once been our shared dream. Then it became a battleground. Now, it was a bunker. A temporary stronghold while I braced for whatever storm Derek had brought into our lives. Not our lives. Mine. I reminded myself. He had forfeited any claim the second he decided to burn it all down. I walked over to the window, watching the morning light crack through the city skyline. Cars passed below. People went about their lives, oblivious to the chaos I was quietly navigating from 12 floors up. I thought about the woman who called. What had he promised her? What had she lost? And how many others were out there staring at broken pieces, wondering how they let someone like Derek into their lives? One thing was certain. He didn't just betray me. He endangered me. And I wasn't going to let that go. Not quietly. Not kindly. Not anymore. Claire didn't waste time. By noon the next day, she pulled every record she could legally access. Public filings, business licenses, civil cases, anything with Derek's name on it. And what she found made my stomach turn. He's in deep, she said grimly, her voice sharp through the speakerphone. 3 credit cards maxed out. A personal loan with a default notice. 2 lawsuits filed within the last year for unpaid debts. And get this, he opened a shell company in Nevada last summer. No revenue. Just a name, a mailbox, and a purpose, to move money. I blinked. Money he doesn't have. Exactly. I think he was planning to funnel the buyer's deposit through it. Make it disappear before anyone noticed. I felt the color drain from my face. So that's what it was all about. The rushed sale. The secret letter from Sophie. The overnight betrayal. Derek hadn't just wanted out of our marriage. He wanted a clean escape. A full reboot with someone else somewhere else using money he stole from a home that wasn't even his. Claire continued. He's lucky the buyer backed out when they did. If the money had been wired directly into his business account, we'd be chasing a ghost right now. Do you think he's trying again? I asked. Trying to sell the place some other way? She paused. He can't, not legally. The buyer flagged the listing, and now there's a formal notice filed against the property. Any new title transfer attempt would be frozen until the investigation is closed. I exhaled. Relief. Just a flicker of it. Still, the bigger question loomed. What now? We move quickly, Claire replied. I'm finalizing the divorce documents, including a restraining order clause. We'll freeze any joint assets, shut down any possibility of further financial damage. And Elena. Yes. We're pressing this hard. I'm not just going to protect you. I'm going to bury him, legally speaking. Part of me wanted to smile. Not out of cruelty, but out of the sheer satisfaction of watching a man who thought he was untouchable finally realize he'd run out of rope. Later that afternoon, I went back into the guest room, Derek's makeshift crash pad, and started boxing up the rest of his things. Shirts still on hangers. Socks stuffed in drawers. His favorite sneakers tossed in a corner. All of it looked so ordinary, like the remnants of a man who just went out for coffee and hadn't come back yet. But I knew better now. Beneath the pile of hoodies at the bottom of his suitcase, I found something that stopped me cold. A burner phone. Cheap. Prepaid. Basic. The kind of phone you buy when you want to talk without being tracked. My heart pounded. I turned it on. It had a lock screen, of course. But after a few guesses, birth year, middle name, Sophie's initials, it clicked open. And what I found wasn't just damning. It was chilling. Text messages. Dozens of them. Some from numbers I didn't recognize. Most of them from one saved contact. T. Money better be wired by Friday. Don't make me come to the apartment. T. You think I won't show up? I know where she lives, Derek. T. You've got 48 hours. Tick-tock. I stared at the screen, fingers numb. This wasn't just debt. This was a threat. Whoever T was, they knew about me. About where I lived. Derek hadn't just endangered himself, he had put me directly in harm's way. And he hadn't said a word. I texted Claire a screenshot. Seconds later she called back. We escalate, she said immediately. Restraining order won't cut it. We need law enforcement involved. Will they even believe me? You have a phone full of proof, a paper trail of fraud, and a buyer threatening legal action. Trust me, they'll take this seriously. I nodded slowly, still holding the phone like it might explode. I want to press charges. For everything. Attempted fraud. Endangerment. The works. Elena, Claire's voice softened. Are you sure? I looked around at the room. At the lies packed into every corner. The text messages. The threats. The gut-deep fear of that midnight call. And beneath it all, the quiet, unwavering resolve that had been growing in me since the moment Derek said, I sold the apartment. I'm sure. By the next morning, I'd filed an official police report. Claire connected me with a detective familiar with real estate scams. The officer took my statement, logged the messages, and began building a case. They told me I had done everything right. Documented, protected, moved quickly. But the damage Derek had done wasn't just legal. It was emotional. It was intimate. It was the deep betrayal of someone who once knew how I liked my coffee, who used to wrap his arms around me in grocery store aisles for no reason at all, and then turned around and planned to sell my future for cash and a quick getaway. There's no law that punishes that kind of betrayal. But there's justice. And I was going to get mine. That evening I opened my windows wide, letting the spring breeze move through the apartment. I lit a candle, played a playlist I hadn't touched in years, songs I used to love before I started muting myself to make room for Derek's preferences. I wasn't waiting for him to come back. I wasn't waiting for closure. I was reclaiming every piece of my life. Every drawer I emptied. Every file I saved. Every document I signed with only my name. This was the new chapter. Not one I had asked for, but one I would write anyway. And this time the pen was entirely mine. I wasn't expecting her. It was a Wednesday afternoon, late spring, when the knock came. Not the kind of frantic, angry pounding I'd come to associate with Derek. No, this was lighter. Hesitant. Almost polite. When I opened the door, Sophie was standing there. And she looked nothing like the smug, sultry woman I'd imagined for months. She looked exhausted. Her makeup was smudged from tears, or maybe she hadn't worn any. Her usually perfect hair hung limp around her face. She clutched her purse tightly to her chest like it was armor. For a moment we just stared at each other. She spoke first. "I know I probably shouldn't be here," she stammered. "But I needed to talk to you. Please." I didn't move. I didn't invite her in. But I didn't close the door either. "Talk about what?" I asked, voice calm. Her eyes flicked behind me, scanning the apartment. Probably remembering the layout, the details. Derek must have fed her like candy. Hardwood floors. Great light. Open kitchen. She's barely ever home. "I know everything now," she said, her voice cracking. "About the sale. About how the apartment isn't his. About the other women." Ah, there it was. I stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. 5 minutes. She nodded gratefully and stepped inside slowly, like she expected the furniture might judge her. We sat at opposite ends of the dining table. I kept my posture relaxed, but inside every nerve was on alert. "I didn't come to argue," she began, "or to defend myself. I know what I did. I needed to hear it from someone who knows what it's like." I said nothing. She took a deep breath. "He told me you were gone. That you left him. That the apartment was in both your names but you didn't care what happened to it. That I could move in with him. That we were building something new." Her voice faltered. I believed him. There it was again, that quiet, pathetic ache of recognition. The way she said it. I believed him. I had to. We all had. "He's very good at that," I said softly. "At making you feel chosen. Special. Like you're the only one in the world who really understands him." Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes." We sat in silence for a moment. Two women on opposite sides of the same lie. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin envelope. "I found this in his things. Thought you should have it." She slid it across the table. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a note, handwritten. Again, but this time by Derek. "Sophie, everything's almost ready. The money's coming soon. Once it hits, we'll leave this city for good. You, me, and freedom. I'm done with Elena. She's nothing but a weight around my neck." I read it once. Then twice. Then folded it and placed it on the table between us. "I already knew," I said. She blinked. "You did. I found your letter in his drawer. The one where you said you missed him. That you were tired of hiding." Her lips parted. She looked devastated. "I really loved him," she whispered. "I know. I thought I was helping him escape something toxic." I leaned forward slightly. "You were. The problem is that something was me. Or at least that's what he told you." Sophie looked like she might break. "I didn't know he was hurting you." "He wasn't," I said plainly. "Not anymore. He just thought he was." Her gaze dropped to her lap. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness," she said quietly. I needed to see for myself that you weren't the monster he made you out to be." That made me smile, bitter and tired. "You won't find a monster here, Sophie. Just a woman who finally woke up." She looked up at me, eyes glassy. "What are you going to do now?" "I'm divorcing him. Officially. Legally. Irrevocably." "Do you think he'll stop?" I shook my head. "No. But he won't get far. Not this time." She hesitated, then stood slowly. "I'm leaving," she said. Leaving the city. I need distance. Space to figure out who I am without him in my head." I nodded. "That's the smartest thing you've said all day." She gave a short, breathy laugh through her tears. "Goodbye, Elena." I watched her walk to the door. And just before she stepped out, I said, "Sophie." She turned. "You're not the first woman he's broken. But you can be the last if you let him stay broken." She nodded slowly, and then she was gone. I closed the door behind her and leaned my forehead against the wood, exhaling deeply. It hadn't felt like a triumph. It had felt like a funeral. But maybe that was okay. Some chapters don't end with slamming doors and dramatic declarations. Some just drift to a quiet close, two people standing in the wreckage of the same man, finally seeing each other clearly. I walked back to the dining table, picked up the envelope, and slid it into the drawer where I kept the divorce papers. A reminder. Not of betrayal but of clarity. Sophie wasn't my enemy. She was a symptom. The disease was Derek. And I had finally found the cure. The day Derek officially moved out, I didn't watch him leave. I stayed in the kitchen brewing coffee, the windows wide open to let in the spring breeze. Claire had arranged for a third-party mover to come pack and ship his remaining things. I didn't want another confrontation. I didn't need more words. Some endings didn't require closure. Some just require distance. By the time the front door clicked shut for the final time, I felt something lift like a weight I'd grown so used to carrying that I hadn't realized how heavy it truly was. The apartment was quiet, still, but it wasn't the uneasy silence of waiting anymore. It was peace. That evening, Lauren, my best friend, came over with Thai food and 2 bottles of wine. We ate on the floor of the living room, surrounded by the echo of laughter and empty wine glasses, the smell of basil and garlic filling the air. "It feels different in here," she said, stretching her legs. "Lighter." "It is," I said, smiling. "It's mine again." "Correction," she raised her glass. "It was always yours. He just took up too much space." We toasted. To fresh starts. To earned silence. To women who choose themselves. The next week I took a day off from work and did something I hadn't done in years. I stayed in bed with no guilt. I slept in. I journaled. I played music I liked, not just the playlists we used to compromise on. I wore my softest pajamas and read an entire book in one sitting. I didn't check emails. I didn't respond to texts unless I wanted to. I existed purely for myself. And it felt revolutionary. I began to reclaim the apartment piece by piece. I rearranged the furniture, moved the couch to face the windows, replaced the rug he insisted was too feminine, with one that was unapologetically bright. I donated half the kitchenware and replaced it with ceramics from a local artist I followed on Instagram. I painted the guest room sage green. Hung up art I actually loved. Ordered plants. Too many maybe. But they filled the corners with something that breathed. Little by little, the space transformed not just in appearance but in feel. It no longer held the echo of his footsteps. It pulsed with me. Claire called 2 weeks later with an update. "The divorce is finalized," she said. "He signed." No fuss. Probably realized he dug himself too deep to climb out. And the fraud case? Buyer decided not to press charges as long as the deposit was returned. "You're clean. Legally, financially, emotionally." She paused. "Well, that part's yours to handle." I smiled. "Already working on it." She exhaled. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too." That night I poured a glass of wine, stood by the window, and watched the city flicker to life beneath me. So many people rushing through life, chasing something, someone, anything. And for the first time in years I wasn't chasing. I was still. And it was enough. Derek tried to reach out a few times. A voicemail here. Pathetic text there. Nothing worth replying to. I made a mistake. "You're really going to do this? You're going to ruin me." I didn't respond. I'd spent too long trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. Now, I was done holding tools for a man who wanted to watch everything burn. Let him clean up his own mess. The final step in reclaiming my space came on a quiet Sunday morning. I took the last remaining photo of us tucked in the back of a drawer, dusty and forgotten, and stared at it one last time. We looked happy, young, hopeful. But behind that smile I now saw it. The imbalance. The subtle shift in body language. The way I leaned toward him while he leaned slightly away. How I clutched his hand while his fingers only loosely returned the grip. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the urge to. I slipped the photo into an envelope, wrote "past" on the front, and sealed it. I didn't throw it out. I wasn't erasing it. But I was putting it away where it belonged. In the past. 1 month later everything had changed. And yet, nothing had. The apartment was still the same size. The same view. The same walls and floors and doors. But I had changed. I laughed louder. Breathed deeper. Slept better. I remembered what it was like to enjoy my own company. to trust my own voice, to decorate a space not for compromise but for joy. And one night, as I sat on the couch with a warm blanket, sipping tea and watching the sunset bleed through the windows, I thought about that phone call, the one that started it all. "I'm divorcing you. I already sold the apartment. You better find somewhere to live." He'd said it like a victory, like a final blow. But what he didn't know was that I'd already started building the life he tried to take from me. Brick by brick, breath by breath. He laughed when he ended things. But I'm the one still standing. And finally, after everything, I was free.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for updates on new videos. See you next time.